Hello, everybody, and welcome to another round of Modern Melee here in the booth with Ginkgo. And
Marco, hello everyone.
here we have another great game for you between two Lurrus players. On your left, Junt Sagavan. On your right, Hardened Scales. Now, how does this work out?
I was very excited for this matchup.
Likewise.
So it's definitely an interesting matchup. I'm not sure how it's supposed to work. I don't think there is one way for this match to go. I think there is multiple things that can happen.
Definitely, absolutely. For those who are still not great with decks and who do not know how they function, let's first talk about Jund Sagavan. So this is the newest version, newest iteration of the Jund deck for all of those Jund players from 1,000 years ago. They evolved as everybody else has, and they incorporated some new cards into their deck. Mostly DRC, Ragavan, and Saga, Urza Saga.
Exactly. Basically the dependency on the green mana is minimal. It's Tarmogoyfs plus some sideboard cards that are quite important, but the dependency of the main deck is really dialed down. That being said,
of course, there is also Wrenn and Six, a key component in returning the Saga back to play.
Exactly. That is probably the most important green card. Although Tarmogoyf is definitely important, but the innovations are Dragon Rage's Channeler, Ragavan, and of course Urza Saga.
Exactly.
The infamous land.
Yes. So all of those things give the Jund player, first of all, inevitability. Second of all, extremely potent late game. They will never run out of steam between Wrenn and Six returning those sagas and then making tokens and tutoring out even something as mundane as Mishra's Baubles to draw extra cards, and paired together with Lurrus that gives also the inevitability to recur those cards from the graveyard to the battlefield for extra draws and extra spells. Makes this deck really a machine to be and a force to be reckoned with. On the other hand,
we have Hardened Scales.
So, for those who do not know, Hardened Scales is very dependent on the namesake card, Hardened Scales, which basically doubles all the counters. Not doubles, but puts another +1/+1 counter on everything that can get to +1/+1 counter. For this reason, we see cards like Zabaz, cards that have a modular attached to them, and cards like Walking Ballista that just become massive all of a sudden. And for that reason also, we see that the Jund player discarded the Arcbound Ravager from the hand of the Hardened Scales players, which is almost always a correct play to make, because it is a free sec outlet that lets you just pile on +1/+1 counters onto the Arcbound Ravager, which get doubled because of the Hardened Scales, although the Hardened Scales players doesn't currently have that card on the battlefield.
Of course, both of these decks are very infamous for being very difficult to play at the highest level, I should say. And so the piloting of these decks is very, 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 it has very high ceiling.
Yes, but also they're hard to play against as well.
Yes, if you are playing against a good pilot of any of these two decks, it's a nightmare, definitely. So I'm gonna focus a bit on Hardened Scales, as this version is the version that plays white, and white cards that are of importance are Ingenious Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And another card that I like very much is I don't know if this list plays it, but I saw it as Blacksmith's Skill.
Yes.
Very
So,
interesting card, very good, and could be good even in this list.
Blacksmith skills gives you some protection that is highly needed in such this kind of decks. Both of those decks, mostly the Hardened Scales decks, but to a lesser extent the Junk deck are critical mass decks. So the while the Junk player can just slam down a 6/7 Tarmogoyf or just several of those Urza Saga tokens and just beat face with them, usually it's a combination of several things, as we see on the battlefield. So the battlefield will get clogged from their side, but mostly it will also exponentially get clogged from the side of the Hardened Scales player because they need a critical mass of just raw materials, just raw stuff on the battlefield.
Very true.
From we see here Ingenious Smith to several other things like Zabaz, like enchantments, the Ozolith, the Arcbound Workers, and everything else. They need a critical mass of things to maintain and to just shift the +1/+1 counters around. So we see some trades, DRC trading for one of the Ingenious Smiths, I believe. Yes, exactly. The Urza's bubble, Mishra's bubble, sorry, gained Delirium for the DRC, and it traded with one of the 2/2 Smiths, which can also grow extremely fast because each time you play an artifact, they get +1/+1 counter forever, but it triggers only once each turn, which is a restriction I think they had to make, because if you could have chained Mishra's Bubble into something like Zabaz, into the Ozolith, into something else, it would be a 5/5 turn 3. Or
very true, very true. Okay, so we have Ballista with 2 counters on the board. Not something extremely powerful at the moment, but it could grow in this deck and it could grow very fast. Also, it's important to note that the Scales player has an Inkmoth Nexus in the play and Basilic's Collar.
Exactly.
Okay, so Inkmoth Nexus can explode very fast in this deck. It can be 1-turn win any turn. Well, almost any turn.
Exactly. So both of those cards that you mentioned are worth talking about. So as you said, Inkmoth Nexus can just pile up a bunch of counters, and with something like Arcbound Ravager, sack everything, dump all of those counters on the Inkmoth Nexus, and just dome the other player for 11 infect or 10 infect, and that's just the game. On the other hand, Basilisk Collar is sneakily potent in these kind of situations. First off, we see Zabaz trading with one of the tokens, not trading but chumping one of the tokens, solely for the reason to get a counter from its modular death trigger onto the ballista. Why? Because if the Basilisk Collar gets attached to the Walking Ballista, each ping is basically a removal spell, because it gives the Ballista Death Touch and Lifelink, the Death Touch being more important one, because one ping, remove a counter, and just mow down the whole board from the other player. And we see here exactly this. The Basilisk Collar gets attached, and now it can wait. Just wait.
It can wait, and it can kill 3 things. These 3 Urza's artifacts on the board all can die to this one ballista with dog's collar around its, I guess, neck. Does Walking Ballista have a neck?
It has some humanoidish features, so yeah, sure.
Let's imagine.
Let's say it has a neck. But also, as we see, the counters player has an active Saga as well. And interesting enough, we will see if he responds no. So this is a part where if there is a Pithing Needle in the deck, the junk player can just put down the Pithing Needle and name something like Walking Ballista, and they cannot respond. Because once the Saga gets popped, the second time when they would get priority is when the Pithing Needle is already on the battlefield.
Exactly. This is something that is very important to know when you play against Urza Saga lands. And we see exactly that. We see Pithing Needle naming, I will assume, naming Walking Ballista.
I hope so.
Yeah. Now, of course, why didn't the Scales player respond? Because Pithing Needle is not a card that you usually play in your main board.
That's one of the reasons. But other reason is also there are several reasons that I can think of. One of the reasons is that they also have an active Urza Saga, and they maybe wanted to bait the player to put the Pithing Needle, if they have it, onto the Urza Saga, which basically renders it useless for the sake of making a token, but it would incentivize. We'll see now. The Walking Ballista is removing counters from.
Now, this is a mystery.
Yes, maybe they did actually. Oh, it's working. So maybe they actually did name Urza Saga, or maybe Inkmoth Nexus.
Possibly Inkmoth Nexus, because if they named Urza Saga, I think the Urza Saga would die. No?
No. It wouldn't die.
No, it wouldn't die. Yeah, okay.
Its abilities would not be able to activate. So it wouldn't be able to activate to make a construct. But maybe that's the point, actually. Either one of those lands is a valid target, and also this also can tell us a lot about the context of junk player's hand. If they think they can beat the board, they can definitely name something like Urza Saga or Inkmoth Nexus. And here we see, I think, that
Urza Saga is tapping for mana.
For mana, yes, exactly. So the Hardened Scales player didn't make a construct end of turn and didn't make a construct in response to the third chapter being put there. So they just tapped it for mana and tutored up an Ozolith.
So my question is, so Pithing Needle is naming Saga.
Exactly, yes.
Why can Saga tap for a land?
For mana, you mean?
Yes.
Because Pithing Needle specifically says that it can shut down activated abilities unless they're mana abilities.
Right. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Okay. Everything is good.
And now we see a great play here, Arcbound Ravager and Hangarback Walker, which means Arcbound Ravager can just sack those things ad libitum, ad nauseam, get a lot of counters, but more importantly, there is a lot more counters going on the Ozolith. And each one of those counters at the Ozolith will be put from the Ozolith on the Walking Ballista, and this is just game, set, and match. Not really a match, but game one goes to the Hardened Scales player due to, I wouldn't say questionable naming with the Pithing Needle. Every one of those names was correct in certain circumstance. Now, was the circumstance correct? I wouldn't know. I do not know the context of the hand of the junk player, but personally I would have named the Walking Ballista 99% of the time.
Yeah, I think that a junk player would be in a bad situation either way, because, even if he named the Ballista, the next turn Ballista would be a 9/9 death touch lifelink.
Not only that,
creature.
but alternatively, the Hardened Scales player would have made like 2 or 3 more of the construct. Every one of them would have first of all grown the Ingenious Smith. Second of all, they would be like 6/6s or 7/7s. And this is one of the points that we discussed previously about Urza Saga.
Yeah.
Urza Saga is... both of those decks are great Urza Saga decks.
Yeah.
But I do think that the Hardened Scales is a better Saga deck.
Definitely. I would definitely agree.
Because it can leverage the tokens better than probably any deck in the format. Maybe Hammer Time can leverage it the same, but I wouldn't question it if you said me either way.
Yeah. There are three decks that Urza Saga is a natural fit, and Hardened Scales, Hammer Time, and the third one is Affinity. And I think that both Affinity and Hardened Scales are more natural fit than Hammer Time. Though Hammer Time definitely uses it well also.
Exactly.
But he uses it differently.
Yeah, for different reasons.
Yeah, for different reasons.
Urza Saga in Hammer Time is mostly a tutor and secondly body producing engine. And speaking of natural fits, we have an unnatural fit of Jund Saga deck on the left. So why is it an unnatural fit but still a good Saga deck? This is a 3-color deck that uses all of the colors. It needs all of the colors, especially red and black, but green to a lesser extent for cards like Wrenn and Six and Tarmogoyf, with Wrenn and Six being extremely important for this to be a good Saga deck. So Wrenn and Six can recur the Saga. The problem is this deck is relentless but slower.
Yes.
This deck can grow the tokens or can have a lot of tokens if given enough time. The problem with this statement is that none of the decks, barring several of them, will give the Jund player enough time to fully take advantage of sagas. On the other hand, one saga from the, let's say in this case, from the Hardened Scales player, will birth two giant threats. Each of one of them can win the game by themselves. Now, on the other hand, one saga from the Jund player we have seen in the best scenario is a 5/5. Maybe a 6/6 when all comes together and they do not sack the Mishra's Bubble and they have the artifact and yada yada. But from the other hand, we have 7/7s, 8/8s, 9/9s, maybe even more from the Hardened Scales player. Not only that, but the synergy with artifacts is that they can sack those artifacts to trigger modular on Arcbound Ravager, to trigger modular on everything else, to have artifacts die and become something else and power up other synergies.
So basically, I think you described the situation quite well in matchup between these two decks. So I'm gonna summarize it. Jund Sagavan is a deck that, with addition of sagas and baubles and Dragon Rage's channelers, it became somewhat of a different deck. It became a grindy deck.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think while before it was like a mid-range deck, now it's really a grindy deck. It's almost like becoming a new archetype.
Only several of the cards in this Jund deck are the same cards that were in Jund decks prior to, let's say, Modern Horizons 2 or even a little bit before that. So there are some discard elements, there are definitely lands, but not all of the lands, because they skewered more towards fast lands and less towards something like Regium Ravines and others. Three top villages nowhere to be seen. And the other thing that stayed is Tarmogoyf. That's it.
And basically, this grindiness is something that while against most other modern decks is fine, even good for this deck, it's bad against Scales because Scales grows exponentially
Exactly.
over time.
Scales grows exponentially while junk grows linearly.
Yes.
That's the one and the only topic that matters. And here we see first time in this matchup the namesake card of the deck, Hardened Scales.
Yes.
So looking good for the Hardened Scales player. On the other hand, we have a DRC with a trigger resolving, there is a land, there is Ragavan in the graveyard with a Mishra's Bubble. So only thing they need is another card type. What is this? This is a Blight Beetle.
Ooh.
This is some spicy sideboard tech. So for all of those who do not know, and I'm sure everybody knows what a Blight Beetle does, but for those who do not know, a Blight Beetle is a 1 in a black for a 1/1 that has pro green, and most importantly, +1/+1 counters cannot be put on creatures your opponent controls.
Wow. A card tailored to put against Hardened Scales.
Exactly, and we see two Hardened Scales on the other side of the battlefield, but it doesn't matter because
Doesn't matter.
there is a Blight Beetle. And
Inquisition of Kozilek, very good.
taking out some potential removal or something else from the hand, we see as a Buzz.
Arcbound Ravager.
No, Arcbound Miser and a green card that I cannot see. What is this? This is Snakeskin Veil.
Okay.
A protection spell that also leaves back a +1/+1 counter. But Arcbound Miser is a 0/0 that comes up with a modular counter on it, and it has lifelink. It's a white creature, and but it cannot
gain counters. It's a dead card in hand. This looks like a great position for a junk player to be in.
Exactly. We have sorcery, instant, artifact, land, and creature in the graveyard, and the DRC is delirious, so we are attacking for 4 this turn, and we see a Saga ticking down or up, and next turn we will have probably one construct and another artifact tutor. Oh wait, yeah.
Okay.
There is a trigger being Texas Baxis, but this is okay. We have a policy of casual Ariel, so such Texas Baxis are allowed as long as
nothing relevant happens.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, so Saga is ticking up to 3. The jump player is deciding if he is going to add mana or create a
Only
token.
mana.
Only
No
mana,
tokens.
it would seem. Okay, so basically I think that Pithing Needle is good here.
I mean, whatever he gets is good. Shadow Spear as well. Also something like the red spell bomb
any
as well.
type of spell bomb, yeah.
Pyrite spell bomb. Basically, whatever he tutors here,
it's his game. It's his game, definitely.
Exactly. We see on
Shadow
Inkmoth Nexus, exactly, yeah, tutor down, and it will probably get attached to the DRC and just swing for a little bit more damage, a little bit more life insurance. The Pithing Needle would have been fine naming something like Inkmoth Nexus. Also the red. The red artifact, the one that deals 2 damage.
Oh, the Pyrite
spell bomb would also have been fine. Anything would have been okay in this position.
Well, he has another Saga that is going to pop next turn, so he can bring in something else. I don't think it matters much.
Yes, I do think that we have just come into the time of the game. You know what time it is.
Oh, it's time to ask all of you to like, share, and subscribe if you like the well, if you like the content, if you want to see more, please do tell us and do like and subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It means a world to us.
Exactly. Well, you are correct. It is always a good time to remind our listeners for that. But I was thinking that it is garbage time.
Oh, it's garbage time. I like that.
Yes. So I do not think that any amount of draws or any stacking of the deck would help the Hardened Scales player win this particular game because they're too far behind and they have. I mean, they do have two artifacts that are 3/3s. Will be now when they tutor, but not much is going on. The Gen player has all of their cards in their hand.
Yeah. Scales are infamous for winning out of nowhere, but this is very hard against a card like Blight Beetle.
That's true, yes.
Scales isn't a deck that sides much removal.
I do think that they have the option of siding in any amount of portable holes or path to exiles or whichever probably white removal they fancy, but I do not think that they had in mind a Blight Beetle.
Yes.
Actually, we see a Basilisk Scholar which can turn around some things. Death Touch and Lifelink, yeah, but Fatal Push will clean this up.
Yeah.
And just another removal will be enough to just get rid of everything that this Urza Saga did for the Hardened Scales player. And we see the John player again in the tank with the trigger of Saga on the stack, whether to make another token or just add some more mana.
Rough decisions for Saga player. He is struggling so hard.
The struggle is real.
He just made another token.
I mean, it is. As we said, it's garbage time. He can probably do whatever he wants now. The tokens are now 1, 2, 3, 4 4s, 5 5s, probably 4 4s, and the DRCs, the Lurrus, the Blight Beetle can just chill back and enjoy his life while the John player attacks directly into the dwindling life total of the Hardened Scales player.
Okay, so just DRC, playing it safely, carefully.
No.
Okay. Well, it is a token. It is a 4/4, so it's
definitely bigger than the 2/2 on the other side.
So he found
there is the game, and the 1/1 in the match goes to Blight Beetle, definitely.
I like this card. I like this edition. And this is something that I wanted to touch on. I think that Junt Sagavan deck is at its best after Sideboard.
Well, it's definitely a control deck in 90% of situations. And we are used to seeing controls in other colors, but this definitely speaks control deck to me. So they have several very impactful sideboard cards, some of them that can be tutored up with the Saga. For example, Pithing Needle that can name either a Walking Ballista or Arcbound Ravager or whichever artifact they fancy, or something as a Blight Beetle. Which brings me to another topic that I wanted to touch upon for the longest time, and that is the inevitability of modern sideboards. So there goes a saying that you can choose to beat anything in modern, but you cannot beat everything. And this really shows. So a Blight Beetle is probably a very narrow card to bring in or to have in your sideboard. It is good against +1/+1 counters, which come as here we see from Hardened Scales, can stop several cards in humans. So blue-white humans, or Jeskai humans, or 5-color humans. Talia's Lieutenant and Champion of the Parish. And which other decks?
Well, it can stop planeswalkers from gaining counters.
I don't think so. I think that's only +1/+1 counters.
Then it can't.
I do not think it's all counters, but we will need to check. But it is a niche sideboard card, but extremely effective.
Yes.
So this is the state of the sideboard for most modern decks. Sideboard cards need either to be extremely flexible or extremely cutthroat against one specific strategy that your main deck is struggling against.
Yes.
If your main deck is struggling against Hardened Scales, you bring in Blight Beetle, you bring in Pithing Needle, or any other such card that will just demolish the whole thing. We saw this one card holding the fort several turns before the game just collapsed on the Hardened Scales player. And this is how a cutthroat or just a pinpoint card needs to be. For example, another example, great example, is Sanctifier in any white deck that can just hose red and black creatures, red and black removal, and just hold it down a fort for several turns while the white X player does their job and gets their bearings. And here we see the third game going strong from the
Scales player.
Scales player, exactly. Zabaz coming in with another +1/+1 counters due to Hardened Scales. There is also a Welding Jar for protection, and the namesake card, Hardened Scales. On the other side, only a land and a bubble getting cracked and drawing for the turn and for the bubble trigger. These delayed triggers are something of a hot topic for as long as Mishra's bubble has been played. I do not think that Wizards will ever print cards that have delayed triggers, because they give not only a bad feeling, but also judge's nightmare to anybody who is judging those things. And missed triggers are not fun.
True.
For anybody.
Very true.
And here we see also Blight Beetle.
So this is very interesting. I can't imagine you playing more than two Blight Beetles.
Definitely not four.
Definitely not four. Well, maybe he really tailored the sideboard for Scales.
Maybe but also he did mulligan once. So there's that. Maybe he mulligans down to the Blight Beetle, which is also very possible.
I think that's a very good mulligan. Yeah. If you are mulliganing for that Blight Beetle, or maybe keeping like mediocre hand, but it has Blight Beetle, I think you can justify that.
Yes, definitely you can justify. And we see from the Scales player there are two Path to Exiles in the hand. So he learned his lesson.
Yep.
And brought in some removal against a pro-green creature that doesn't let his deck to function. And other things are Walking Ballista, and I cannot see other cards. And I think the Walking Ballista will be the pick from all the cards. No, a Path to Exile.
Okay.
I mean, he does not have white mana at the moment, as I see it. There's an artifact land that only produces colorless, and there is a pathway on the green side, right?
On the green side, it seems, yeah.
And the John player playing out a Saga that will be great several turns after. Oh, that was a Nature's Claim.
Nature's Claim, indeed.
And the Saga is definitely an enchantment. And there is an ancient grudge on Zabaz.
Very good.
This is just
very good. This is just beating. They're beating each other
Oh,
down.
I have an excellent play that probably both of them missed. So how this could have been avoided?
Yeah.
So we have a Nature's Claim versus Ancient Grudge.
Yeah.
And Ancient Grudge needed 2 mana. But when you play the Saga, there is a trigger.
Oh, there is a trigger. Yeah.
Yes. That lets you put a first chapter onto the Saga.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, and do please correct me if I'm wrong, in the comments below, you can destroy the Saga as an enchantment before it gets the ability to tap for colorless.
I think you are correct, and
I also think I'm correct, but I could be extremely wrong, and I need to check this afterwards. But if this were the case, then with the trigger on the stack, the Scales player could have destroyed the Saga, and the Jump player wouldn't have had 2 mana to destroy Zabaz. But to cast Ancient Grudge. But of course, they could have also cast it this turn, and also the Scales player had a Welding Jar that they didn't use, probably has some other use for it for more impactful targets. And Zabaz is also legendary, so maybe there's another one in their hand.
mm-hmm.
So all the points to consider, but extremely interesting hand. And we see a turn 3 Lurrus in hand. And a swing for 1 with the Blight Beetle.
So Lurrus is another very good card in this particular archetype, and I think that situation with this Lurrus in hand has improved greatly for already good standing Jund situation on board. Now the white mana won't do much. Well, it will exile the Blight Beetle.
Yes, exactly. So
White
mana will do exactly what it needs to do.
Oh no, I forgot that Path of Exile exiles. Exactly. Never mind.
It's in the name.
Never mind.
But yeah, so on one hand, Lurrus on the battlefield together with a bubble in graveyard is a great engine for drawing extra cards. On the other hand, the Scales player doesn't care. And I can say this because they have all of those moving pieces that need to be answered, and every one of them can just grow massive and life-threatening from nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we see exactly Lurrus getting down, Bubble getting played, and 1 green mana being held up for the Ancient Grudge. And right away, Bubble being sacked and looking at the opponent's top of the deck for some extra information and getting in for those damages with Blight Beetle. This Blight Beetle is just living his life.
This Blight Beetle did some serious work in this particular match.
Yeah, but I see also one other problem.
Yeah.
Besides lack of white mana, there's a general lack of lands from the Hardened Scales player, which is also not a good sign for them.
No. Well, we also know that he has a Ballista in hand that can't enter because of Blight Beetle.
Exactly.
He can't play the Path of Exile
because of lack of white mana, and so back and so forth. Opala, there is a third land, and it is a white-green one.
Oh, okay.
We might have a game here, despite the Dijon player having like 6 cards in their hand and the draw engine and, all overall advantage in everything that they do. But there's also Wrenn and Six that will bring back the Urza Saga, and there will be tokens. No, there is no Urza Saga. I mean, just a fetch land is good enough.
Is there no Urza Saga? What happened? I don't know. I think that there was one Urza Saga.
No, this was the last game.
Okay. Everything is confusing me.
Exactly.
Okay, so Wrenn and Six. Okay, this is gonna be a hard match to combat for the
Oh
scales.
yes. If the Scales player manages to do so, it will be in one turn with something like a Walking Ballista that just gets piled on with counters, and then because there is Hardened Scales, and there is also the Ozolith, and there is also Welding Jar, and here we see a third land that will probably kill right away the Blight Beetle. Exactly.
This will give a land.
And the Blight Beetle should be exiled. Yeah, exactly. Right there. This will give a land to the jump player, but I don't think that the Scales player cares so much. Again, they can plow through a lot of things as long as they get to develop their board and just get a critical mass of stuff. Their artifacts, their enchantments, their creatures, their lands, there's everything. They just need a critical mass of stuff.
Okay, so now the Scales player has a choice. I imagine he has a choice. He can play a Ballista for 1 and it will come with 2 counters. Or maybe he can do something else. We don't know what's that.
Well, yes, so oh yeah, there was a trigger from the missions bubble. There is a Ballista for 2. I think this is a fine play. It can kill Lurrus, or it can just stay there and grow, because if they repulsed 4th land from the top, God forbid, it can get 2 counters instead of 1 counter for each 4 mana that they put into it. But we also see an Ancient Grudge in the graveyard. And it has been there since the turn 2, and
it can pop. It can definitely pop, though, Welding Jar can do its thing as well.
Yes.
But I imagine that the jump player has a removal in hand. He has a lot of cards. He's been recurring this Mishra's Baubles. I think this is the 2nd or 3rd
probably
turn.
3rd or maybe even 4th. So it's the 3rd turn, yes.
So this is an interesting situation. It's a grindy game, and I said at the beginning of this round, or some in the middle of it, that grindiness is bad against Scales. But in this situation,
I mean, this is a specific case because the Scales player just had such a bad luck or bad RNG without the 3rd land, without the 3rd mana, and just having the Blight Beetle come down again on turn 2 and not being able to answer it up until turn 5 or something. So those are 3 turns that they basically skipped without doing anything. So in this case, Jund has had enough time to just grind and do their thing. And now we see Engineered Explosives for 1, clearing down the Ozolith, clearing down the Hardened Scales, and leaving the Scales player with only a 2/2 Ballista. And the Wrenn and Six is ticking up ever so slightly each turn up towards the ultimate, which can actually be a win condition in this deck. I mean, just recurring a lightning bolt every turn, or every land, or whichever removal spell is just extremely impactful.
Wrenn's ultimate was a lot more powerful in the older versions of this deck, but it has some potency even in this version.
Exactly. And we see another piece of removal being pointed towards the Walking Ballista. And we have a reader. Just 2 damage, or 2 damage towards Walking Ballista, and he kills Lurrus, as he should probably. But this leaves an empty board and 3 lands versus 75 lands and an active Wrenn and Six. But here is
Genius Smith, a great comeback card.
Yes, exactly. This is always a 2-for-1. It gives you a card, hopefully.
Yeah.
And it leaves a body behind, which grows.
it's such a bad luck for it to whiff in an artifact deck. But there we go. There's an artifact.
There is an Arcbound Ravager. And we see also a slight delay on the bubble trigger, but it's fine. As we said, this is not a competitive REL, so those things are fine as long as the players remember to get those triggers. And here we see an Arcbound Worker, which is a 1/1 for 1, extremely powerful, but it gives also the Ingenious Smith a 1/1 counter.
We have a response in terms of fetching.
Maybe there will be some response towards getting the counters or whatever. Maybe some kill spells will be pointed at the creatures.
Let's see what it is. Is it a Fatal Push or maybe another red spell?
And it is a lightning bolt.
It
Ding,
is.
ding, ding. It is a red spell. Something like, as we said, some impactful card from the Scales player can still turn this around if they have the ability to have Sanctifier and back in their sideboard. This could just turn this whole game around. And here we see an Arcbound Ravager getting Kozilect from the hand, and well, as good as the comeback was, I do think we are in garbage time again.
Yeah, definitely. Wrenn can do its thing. There's a fat Tarmogoyf on the board.
Yeah, it has artifact, enchantment, creature, land, instant, sorcery. Did I miss something? Artifact, enchantment, creature, land, instant, sorcery. So 6/7 probably against a 1/1 Arcbound Worker.
Very sad.
Yeah, and we see Lurrus getting into hand. This is the best they can do with 3 mana, and on turn, I do not know which one, but it is sign of weakness, and we see another Ancient Grudge getting pointed at a 1/1 creature.
Just clearing away for that Tarmogoyf to hit.
Exactly, but not only that, clearing the board, having the board empty favors the Wrenn and Six, just getting back those lands, maybe even holding them in hand for future ultimate to just abuse the power of just recurring your kill spells or burn spells for tiny fraction of a price, which is discard your land from your hand. And you can have this from your graveyard.
Very true.
6/7 truck coming in, dwindling down the life total of the Hardened Scales player. Can they still recur? I mean, everything is possible with Lurrus.
Lurrus does give them some options, but again, we are in such a late game that Lurrus with 3 lands is too slow.
Excuse me, they have 4 lands.
Oh, sorry.
They have found the 4th land.
Yeah, right.
There is a 4th land, exactly. But still, I highly doubt it, because there is also another Ancient Grudge in the graveyard, and if they recur any artifact from the graveyard, it will just get destroyed. And we see maybe an Ozolith, maybe Hardened Scales comes back. None of those things. Zabaz, a Champa blocker, and another land, tapped land being put down. And Zabaz gets killed by the Ancient Grudge flashback. John player untaps, there is a truck still looming, and this will be a Wrenn and Six ultimate, and I do think there is a lightning bolt and several lands in the hand for 3, 6, 9 damage to the head, and I do think that's enough. And this is the game end match between John Sagavan and Hardened Scales, affinity without affinity. Again, if you like this commentary, please like, share, subscribe. It helps us immensely, and thank you for watching.
And it's free. It's free.
And it's also free. Goodbye.
Bye.